April was the cruelest month, to paraphrase T.S. Eliot. As May now starts, we are still not only in lockdown, but some of our favourite political commentators have been hitting some very hard times. As some of you may have watched, I did a stream about millennial woes and how his sordid activity has now caught up with him, and now he is forced to take a break from activism. But in this video, we'll be discussing the fall of Mark Stefano, BuzzFeed and the Financial Times propaganda agent for the progressive left. Yes, we're going to the opposite side. But first, who is Mark Stefano apart from being a left-wing propaganda agent? Well, he is the man who has used his media influence to attack and essentially defame people on the anti-SJW side of the culture war. He was the man that got Count Dankula and Sargon of Akkad demonetised on YouTube, and he has been instrumental in making sure that Tommy Robinson has been deplatformed from basically anywhere that he has tried to make content on, to the point he doesn't even need to do anything anymore. People will do it for him without even the prompt. Tommy's recent ban from TikTok, for example. So, as you can see, we are dealing with a nasty piece of work, your typical leftist propagandist, and in January he joined the Financial Times, a more prestigious newspaper than BuzzFeed. You would assume that Stefano has made it, that underneath his propagandist exterior, there must have been something that the Financial Times saw in him. A journalist? Stefano bit off more than he could chew. His behaviour, much like the aforementioned woes, caught up with him, and now he has been suspended from his dream job only 3 months into it, because he couldn't hide his tracks when he was spying and hacking into fellow newspapers' Zoom conference calls. Yes, Stefano was hacking into the Independent and Evening Standard's conference calls on the app Zoom and listening in on their conversations. The meeting was about the ongoing pandemic and the economic consequences on the two sister newspapers. Basically, they were discussing budgets, wages, potential wage cuts, the like, hard things that have to be talked about due to the enforced depression that we are currently in. Why was Stefano interested in getting this information? I have no idea, to be honest. It hasn't been explained. But what we do know is the events that transpired and how he got caught. It started with a profile joining the conference call with the work email of Stefano being clearly present on it. Stefano's profile was in the call for a few minutes, then disappeared, because clearly Stefano recognised that people could see who he was, and he was using his own work email. Nice move, mate. He then returned with what he assumed was a far more anonymous profile with a black screen as its profile pic, and he proceeded to stay in the call until its conclusion. Why the Independent and the Evening Standard staff didn't block and boot him off the call, I don't know. Did they assume at first it was someone accidentally signing in twice from one of their own? Who can say? But I think it's moronic to allow a total stranger in on the call, because, as we can see, they could be up to anything nefarious. But what was Stefano doing in the time he was listening to all of this? Surely he must have been taking notes on the things they were saying and thinking of how to work this into an article. He was live tweeting it on Twitter. Yes, the idiot actually thought it was wise after his last hiccup to live tweet to the whole world about what was happening to the Independent and Evening Standard staff. This is potentially illegal, as he was not only listening in and hacking into a conference call, but surely the stuff he was tweeting out was also breaking similar laws, because this is information that is on a need-to-know basis within the company. Why does he need to know this and share it with the world? Regardless, after the conference call, the Independent and Evening Standard staff were able to trace the anonymous account Stefano had made to his mobile phone. How? Well, I can only speculate that they had police involvement or some pretty good technical staff of their own. That's not the kind of information you get so easily, but nonetheless, Stefano was caught and he has been suspended by the Financial Times. Unfortunately, the Independent and Evening Standard are not going to press charges against Stefano, apparently content that his suspension is enough for them, though I would say that they should press charges because things like this can't go unpunished, especially as according to this article, the law in question that he may well have truly broken is the Computer Misuse Act 1990, which has jail time of up to a year. Journalists or anybody really who are engaging in this type of behaviour ought to be punished, especially if it turns out to be against the law. Whatever, they have their reasons. But what a lot of my foreign viewers may not be aware of is that this is not the first time that British newspapers have been caught hacking. Back in 2011, there was a massive scandal when it was discovered that many tabloid newspapers were caught hacking into people's phones to gather scoops and information on potential stories. That's just my very short summary of a very large and complex scandal, but go look it up. People they hacked and the stories they were trying to report is just horrible. In fact, it was so bad that one newspaper was shut down for good as a result of this, the News of the World. And ironically, the Financial Times was one of the newspapers to speak out against the hackers, and yet here they are now, in 2020, in a hacking scandal of their own. Is it hypocrisy or is it just incompetence? The paper has failed to explain why Stefano did what he did. Was he under orders to spy and report on other newspapers? Was there going to be some kind of hit piece on these rival publications? Or was he acting on his own initiative and simply using the tactics he learned in the left-wing activist circles at BuzzFeed and similar rags? Who knows? All we can do is speculate, but what we can say is that Stefano is an unethical hack. He has potentially lost future prospects of ever getting a job at a publication like the Financial Times. They cannot afford to hire someone like him, the tabloids certainly cannot after the phone hacking scandal, and he will be a hot potato nobody would want to touch. I can certainly see him joining smaller left-wing activist sites for sure. They have never been interested in journalistic ethics. Gamergate taught me that years ago. Although he will never achieve the heights that he temporarily achieved in the last 3 months. And I think it's a fitting career end to a man who for the last several years has made it his job to sabotage and end the careers of his political opponents. He used every dirty trick in the book to lie and defame non-leftists, ruin their livelihoods, and to intimidate companies like TikTok and YouTube. All for his far left agenda. And now it's come full circle. In the end, he lived by the sword and he died by the sword. I have zero sympathy for him. He deserves everything he is getting right now, and I hope more people like him end up this way. The less of them in positions of influence and power, the better for society. Good riddance, Mark Stefano.